Alrighty, you guys, and we are back. Thank you so much for tuning in. This is the Jared Nicole Show every Tuesdays from 11:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. Central Time. I'm super excited because we have our final guest for today, Miss Toria Jones, and she's going to be talking to us about her new podcast, Just a Little Pod, and talking about people who are living with disabilities and why she felt the need to speak up and speak out and bring awareness and spotlight those living with disabilities. So I'm going to go ahead and add her to the stream. Yeah. Hi, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Great. I'm so excited to have you on the show today. So thank you for taking time out the day to join us on the show. I just want to go ahead and start off by letting you introduce yourself, and then we're going to go ahead and dive right into the conversation from there.
Awesome. Yes. And thank you for having me, by the way. Yes. So I'm Toria. I'm from Houston. I've lived here basically all my life. And during the day, or my career, I guess you could say, I work for a nonprofit here in Houston, serving women, men, and children who experience domestic violence and sexual violence and things like that. So that's my daytime work. And then so during the nighttime, I guess you could say, or the evening, I started this podcast with my best friend, and yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Right. Yep. The rest is history. So go ahead and tell us a little bit about, I love the title. I think it's so cute. Just a little pod. And you felt it was so important to, start this podcast. How did this come to be? Was this something you always knew you wanted to do, or this is more kind of like a recent phenomenon? Tell us a little bit about it.
Yes, so it's been kind of like a long time coming. Me and my best friend have been talking about doing something like this for a while now. And honestly, it really came out of just, my life living with a disability and, everything that comes with it.
Right.
And I'm always talking to, my friends about the things that I experience with living with a disability. And I'm always talking to them about it and venting and, sometimes sharing my frustrations and stuff like that. So I decided with my best friend, we decided to kind of put this to use and create a podcast where we talk about the things that goes on with living with a disability. And it's not, it's not the same for everybody. But at the same time, it's something that I feel like everybody should know and to hear about. It's not a topic I feel is, I guess, thought about. So, and then on top of that, it's even more special because you have Black women talking about disabilities, which is, to me, rare. I don't really see a lot of Black women talking about disabilities. They exist, of course, but I feel like it's, I just want to see more of it. So I kind of wanted this to be, just wanted that to be for that, I guess, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. So can you start off by kind of sharing a little bit about yourself and your personal story, growing up and living with a disability, kind of shed some light on that and share with us a little bit about, some of the things that you experienced growing up.
Yes, definitely. So with my disability specifically, my disability is called achondroplasia, which is a form of dwarfism. And so basically my life, so I am shorter stature, I guess, to the public eye. But with my disability specifically, it affects the bones. It's like a medical condition. So like my arms and my legs are shorter than the average. And then, of course, there's other medical situations that I have to be aware of, such as like my spine and my brain. Hydrocephalus is a concern within the dwarfism community, and things of that nature. So living with this wonderful disability, it came with of course, bullying and frustrations and things like that. Simply because people don't understand it. They just see that I'm little, and they don't understand that there's more to it. And so having to, navigate through life where things are not accommodating to me. So, for example, something as simple as me going to a grocery store and wanting to get some baking soda and it's up top. I can't, get something as basic as that.
Right.
I have to I have to fix up my car to make sure that I can drive it, of course.
Right.
Just everything I have to have accommodations for, especially with things that maybe most people don't think about. So yeah, and of course, I'm the only little person or a person with dwarfism in my family. So of course, my family is wonderful, and they were super understanding. And I feel like when my mom found out about me being a little person, she instantly was like, let's research everything and figure out what, and she was very focused on the fact that she wanted to make sure that I was raised, to be independent, just like any other person would be, to have confidence in myself, and to, also understand that you might need help with certain things and to not be afraid to ask for help. So I feel like she did a wonderful job with that. But yeah, it's just mostly just trying to navigate through life, knowing that life is not accommodating to me, and having to, fight for myself and advocate for myself. In all realms, like, socially, medically, I have to advocate for myself sometimes. Yeah, everything. So, yeah, it's a fun time, but it can get frustrating at times.
Yeah, absolutely. I bet, like you said, I loved what you said earlier when you spoke about how society sees you, right? You said people see me as, someone short, shorter in stature. But I love how you didn't make that kind of, you didn't let that define you necessarily. I love how you said your mom and, other people in your family, they made sure you were independent, having, a normal life, even though there were times where, you said there's things that you experience like bullying and trying to, find ways to, find certain accommodations and things of that nature. But I think that's so key and super important because a lot of times I feel like society wants to define people by their condition or disability, right? You have this disability, you have this condition, so you can only do this or you can only do that. And I love I admire you, and I love other people who are living with disabilities who are, basically breaking and putting an end to that narrative that, kind of just wants to categorize you guys, either all together or put you in these little boxes or categories saying, oh, this person can only do that, this person can only do this, and things like that. And when you mentioned earlier, a lot of times people don't even know that you are dealing with things that have to do with your spine, your bones, your brains. People just focus on what they see on the outside. So what do you think is something specific that people living with disabilities want the outside world, the community, society to understand about them as individuals?
Yes, I personally think that I think disabled folks just want our voices to be heard. Oftentimes we are pushed away. There's a huge history of isolating disabled folks because, when you're disabled, you're not normal, right? You're not normal. You're not like everybody else. And so therefore I'm going to put you over here. Whatever you have to say, whatever you have to think, it doesn't matter. It does not add to what we have going on. So, so we have a history of isolating disabled folks. And so what I think that disabled folks are wanting, especially now, is that we just want our voices to be heard. Absolutely. And we want our feelings and the things that we want them to be validated. Absolutely. We want, for example, to give you like the, I guess the most recent is the whole COVID vaccinations and the whole COVID thing in general. Although it says, folks with chronic illnesses are, top tier, it's shutting out a whole bunch of other disabled folks, and not also thinking about maybe they don't have transportation, or maybe their caregivers are not reliable, or something to that effect. So it shuts out a lot of people. And the disabled community is trying to tell you that, and is trying to, fight for themselves, but like everybody's,
right.
You're being sensitive, or you're being dramatic, things like that. So I just really think validation is something that we really want. It's instead of like asking for a seat at the table, I feel like we want to like barge in and make room for ourselves and just say, hey, we're here. And you probably know someone with a disability. Absolutely. Because it's actually way more common than you think. I think the latest statistic was like 1 in 4 living with a disability, whether you know it or not. Right. And so when you continue to shut people out, you're shutting yourself out, you're shutting your family members out, your friends. And so it affects us all. And so, yeah, just listen to us. We have a lot to say.
No, I love that. And I love how you're so, basically just really pulling for people to speak out. I love how you're not shy about it, and you want people to know, hey, we do have a lot of stuff to say. Because like you said, people living with disabilities, they get overlooked. People don't think about the everyday things. I'm sure the example you mentioned, it's kind of sad, because I don't think grocery stores, certain buildings, they don't even think about stuff. I cannot name one grocery store where I'm thinking, where do they have, some kind of accommodation for someone like, for someone like you who can't reach, like you said, the baking soda, I believe it was, on the top shelf, just different things like that. And it's really sad, because I know people who, they're afraid of, when they're applying for jobs, even in people who suffer from disabilities or mental health reasons, they're afraid of putting that down on paper, because they're afraid of getting discriminated against, and worst case, not hired. So I can't even imagine, growing up, what that was like. And so one of the key things you mentioned earlier was bullying. And I want to talk a little bit about bullying, because I know it's something that a lot of people living with disabilities end up facing. And a lot of times it can just become so toxic, right? The environments can become so toxic. People end up taking their lives. They end up leaving schools, right? Trying to transfer to another one. Just a whole bunch of different things. People afraid to post pictures of themselves, right? On social media or online, because of the trolls on social media in today's times, what they're going to say, and different things like that. So for you, basically growing up and, having to deal with bullies and things of that nature, how did you overcome that?
Well, overcome is an interesting word. I'm still working on it, to be honest with you. I'm not gonna lie to you. It still like affects me to this day. Right. But yeah, I just try to tell myself that, this is the body that I was given. And if you have a problem with my body, that's something you have to deal with on your own, because there's no way I can change it. Yes. And so, and I'm trying to learn, again, I'm still learning to honestly embrace my body, my life and things like that. It's, to be even more honest, it took me a long time to even accept the fact that I even have a disability. I never wanted to be associated with that term. I tried to be normal so bad. But at the same time, I've noticed that there's no running from it. I just have to embrace it. And yeah, so I think that's one of the biggest things I would hope for other people to do, is to just continue to try to embrace your body. And you're the expert of your own body. So, like, although people might make fun of you or make comments or untrue comments about you or anything like that, like, they don't know the things that you experience.
Right.
They don't have the pleasure of being in your body. So, because there's a lot of there's a lot of positives to being little, if you ask me. But yeah, so I just would hope that everyone living with a disability to just embrace it, and it's a part of your identity, and it's beautiful. Everything about it is beautiful, and it's unique, and it's special, and it deserves to be here, and it just spices up the life of everyone else. And yeah, that's the best advice I can give you.
No, I love that. Spices up the life of everybody else. I love that. So what are some of the common myths and misconceptions that you would say people have about your, about your disabilities specifically, and then about people with living with disabilities in general? What are some things that you typically hear or have heard?
So for me specifically, or for people like me with my disability, it's funny enough, there's a lot of funny myths out there. So just in general, people just think that I can't do anything, basically. So people think that I can't drive when I can. People think that I can't have children, even though I can, and having children has nothing to do with my dwarfism. So so I can have children, and then let's just say I can't have children. That has nothing to do with my dwarfism. Does that make sense?
Right.
So that's one, or that's another one. A lot of folks assume that both of my parents or one of my parents is also a little person like me. And I'm like, no, actually, two average height parents can have a child with dwarfism. It happens, actually, way more common than you think. That's another one. I think a general thing that a lot of people assume about my disability is that they think that I am just meant to be dependent on my family, I guess. Like, I'm not going to ever get a job. I'm not ever going to have a family. I'm not ever going to date. I'm not ever going to do any of those things.
Wow.
And I think too, with all types of disabilities, I think that's also a common thing. A lot of people think that disabled folks don't have an actual life, when in reality, disabled folks have lives just like everyone else. They're married, they date, they go out to bars and go out to clubs. They have an apartment, they have a house, they work 9 to 5 jobs. Yes, like it's wild to me that I have to say that to everyone else, but it's like, yeah, everyone is totally capable of having a typical life. It might look different than yours, but hey, everyone does the same thing, I guess you could say.
Yeah, absolutely. So going off of that, why do you think then in this society it's so hard for people to essentially see past someone who is living with a disability? It's kind of crazy because it's often the people who don't know anything about that person's disability are the ones who have so much to say about it, right?
Yeah.
You have no idea what it's like to walk through that person's shoes, to be in that person's body, yet they're so vocal about it and they have a hard time seeing past it. What do you think that is? Do you think it's just ignorance and lack of education and or the resources to educate themselves? Do you think it's something deeper within the person themselves and they're just kind of taking it out? What do you think about that?
I think it has everything to do with, like I was saying earlier, because of society having a history of isolating disabled folks. There's a sense of there is the lack of education. No one wants to put in that work to discuss about, hey, this is a disability. What is a disability? It's this, this, and this. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Something as simple as like Black History Month just came out recently, or just passed recently, and disabled folks are always counted out in Black History Month. And when I say that, people fail to realize that Harriet Tubman, for example, had a disability. Maya Angelou had a disability. Muhammad Ali had a disability. But that's one of those things that was kind of shut out. And the more that we shut those things out, there is going to create this environment of ignorance. And of course, when people are ignorant and they don't know what to do, I guess, when they see something, that's when they have the comments, the bullying, and the trolling and all that stuff. So, yeah, I really think that society has to do better about that. And that's why I'm always like, listen to us. We're here. And another thing, and I don't want to sound a little shady, I guess, but as much as people want to ignore disabilities, just because you weren't born with a disability, that doesn't mean that you could potentially become disabled. You see what I'm saying? Like, not every disabled person was born with a disability. Some folks became disabled later in life. And so again, if you're going to continue to be ignorant and continue to push people out and continue to dehumanize disabled people, just remember that, again, someone you know has a disability, and someone close to you probably has a disability, but also you could potentially be one of us, you know? So I don't know if I just went off on a tangent, but I just thought that was important to say that. But yeah, it's just, we have to have these conversations. We have to talk to our kids about it. You know, I don't know how many times I've gone to stores and I've seen children, you know, point, laugh, comment, all those things. And parents don't do anything about it. They're just like, oh, you know, little Tommy, it's whatever, right? But it's like, no, that's a good teachable moment. You know, talk to your child about, oh, this person might have a disability, and yeah, you know, like, so yeah, let's talk about it more and educate more.
Yeah. So growing up in school, did you feel like, and the school kind of set you up for success? And what I mean by set you up for success, just thinking about you maybe being in lower elementary school and you had your peers and your classmates, do you feel like they made you feel comfortable? I guess I could say, if I'm putting that the right way, like comfortable around other people. Do you feel like they kind of casted you out and was like, you know, maybe overdid it, like, oh, Toria, like, you know, they want to make sure you're okay, right? But maybe they catered to you a little bit too much. What was that like?
I'll be honest with you. My elementary school life was actually, I thought, was super perfect and helpful. And I think it had everything to do with my mom being like my biggest advocate. So yeah, so my school during my elementary time did a great job accommodating to me whenever I like needed certain things. For example, I had to have like a stool under my feet when I'm sitting at my desk to elevate my my legs so it doesn't put pressure on my spine. And so, yeah, schools was very good with creating that for me. And then on top of that, I had a learning disability. So I have a couple of disabilities, I guess. But yes, I had a learning disability. So they were really good with accommodating for that as well. My friends during that time, of course, I think in the beginning, it was maybe more tough for me and for others.
Right.
But after the first, I don't know, day or two, people were very nice to me and sometimes would fight for me as well if I was experiencing a bully or something. My teachers, I knew that if a kid was making fun of me or making me uncomfortable, I knew who to go to. And my teachers were really good with basically stopping that
Mm.
in its tracks. So I was very fortunate, I feel like,
That's good.
to have a pretty decent experience. I'm not going to say either that, like, I mean, I was bullied, don't get me wrong. But on a general sense, I think my school did a really good job. And then, like I said earlier, my mom being my biggest advocate
Right.
also made sure that, you know, my school environment was a safe environment and that I could, you know, succeed in life. You know, while I'm in school. So
Right. Absolutely. I
mhm,
think I think you bring a really good point. Like you keep saying that your mom was your biggest advocate. And I feel like advocacy is something that where I feel like, everyday people need to be advocates because you said 1 in 4 people are living with a disability. And, a lot of the times, a lot of us, we may not necessarily know exactly what that disability is, right? But that doesn't mean that we can't be advocates on their behalf.
right.
Because, like you said, one of the interesting things that I think about is whenever it's different, like you said, Black History Month or Hispanic Heritage Month, or, it's Pride, anything like that, you're right. You see all of the different panel discussions and speakers coming to talk and different people, representing that community. But I don't hear about the Black women on this panel who are living with the disability who are going to speak, right? You don't hear about the LGBTQIA plus community, people living with a disability. It
Yeah.
just it's just kind of pushed off to the side there. So I
Mhm.
do think that advocacy is a big part of it. I do also want to talk a little bit about political correctness.
Yes.
There's a lot of people who, with political correctness, a lot of people will say it's kind of killing society. Like, oh, everybody, I'm sure you've heard it. Everybody's trying to be politically correct this day and age. But for you, and I would say disabled folks in the community, do you feel like political correctness is something that's very, very important to you guys? Or are you kind of more so understanding if people make the mistake and say the wrong thing? How do you feel about
Mhm.
political correctness?
Yeah. So I don't know if I should speak, I guess, for the whole disability community, because I do know that some folks, certain things work for them and then
Right,
some folks it doesn't. Um,
right.
but I will say, to the best of my ability, on a general sense, um, like, for example, there's this thing of like special needs versus disability or disabled, right?
Mhm.
Um, the most common argument with that is special needs is pretty much a demeaning term to use,
Mm,
because what you're saying is you're basically trying to deny the disability and replacing it with like, well, she's just special, right? Or he's
mhm,
just special. She got special powers and things like that. No, like, let's call it what it is. It's a
mhm.
disability. It's okay. It's not a bad word. Okay. Yeah, it's not.
Right.
And so it's okay. This child has a disability. So what are the accommodations that this person's going to need to succeed in life? Okay.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely. Right.
So there is that conversation. So just trying to tell the community or tell the world that disabled is not a bad word. It's okay to call
Yeah.
folks in that community disabled.
Mhm.
Okay. I will say there's other terms that probably isn't the best, like handicap. That was the word that we used years and years ago.
Right.
And it now has a bit of a negative connotation to it. So we completely got rid of that word, right? But there's some folks in the disability community who is totally okay with that word. So I guess the best thing to do is like to not assume and just ask. There's no harm in asking. What is a term that you are okay with and comfortable? I know for me, so the terms that I accept is little person when you're talking about my dwarfism. And I know popularly, when someone sees another person who is a shorter stature, they like to use this word that I'm only going to say once because I honestly hate that word, but they use this term like midget, and there's a very, I can go on for hours about this, but it's a history attached to that word, and it's not, first of all, it's not medically correct, and then two, it's very dehumanizing, it's not appropriate, and it can be triggering for a lot of folks, me included. And so, so if you want to be politically correct, you would use the term little person. That is a term that we created and we are like completely okay with, because in reality, we are little. Like, we're not denying that.
Right.
So, and we are a person. And so yeah. And then also you could just call me by my name. That's also another awesome thing too. So, but yeah, I know political correctness is such a, I don't know, people, get uptight about that, but I want people to also understand that words matter. Words mean things. And words have had a history of having violence behind it, oppression behind it. And so you might not think that these words mean anything to you, but it does affect, in this case, affect the disability community, because yeah, we have a history, and it's not a beautiful, or there's some bad parts about our history. So please, just, I know people are, uptight about it, but just understand that. So.
Right. No, for sure. I think you raised several good points, but one that stuck out to me is just ask. And I know there have been times where even I, may have seen someone who's living with the disability, and we want to ask, right? We want to ask questions because we do want to educate ourselves, but sometimes we're so ashamed or, scared to offend someone. But I believe that, if your intention is right, and you're really trying to educate, and the way you're telling me, if I were to be like, hey, Toria, I don't know about your disability, please educate me, please let me know the correct, terminology, do you mind sharing? I think if we can take steps as a society to get to that point where, like you said, we're constantly having conversations about this, it won't be considered, such a taboo or controversial subject or topic, right? I think a lot of times people, they don't ask because they're afraid. They're afraid, and then they don't ask because society isn't putting forth these conversations, like you said, which is a great point. If we're not talking about it at all, how do we expect people to ask? If we're not sitting down like you and I and having conversations about these topics, we're not going to progress. So, I think it's little by little, right? That people try to have conversations like these, start, making accommodations in stores and buildings, at work, different places like that. But I do definitely think, in terms of people living with disabilities in society, really, being more open to having conversations, we have a very, very long way to go, unfortunately. So, Miss Toria, what is next for you? I mean, you have this podcast. So what is your hope and hope and vision for the future? What are you wanting to really do with this podcast and you yourself?
Yes. So I love this question. So, for the podcast, I just hope that it reaches enough people, and it creates a fire in them to want to do something, and to be better. I'll be honest with you. I hope this podcast challenges folks, makes people uncomfortable, because I mean, the beauty of learning is there is going to be moments where you're uncomfortable. And because we don't talk about disability culture or awareness, you know, a lot of us have participated in ableism, and probably didn't even know it, right? People probably don't even know ableism even is a thing. Okay. Right. So, and so, yes, if you participated in something like that with my podcast, I hope that it can, you know, kind of expose that and have you think. I want you to think about these things. How can you do better? How can you be better? How can you make your environment more accessible for disabled folks? How can you, even in your language, how can you improve your attitudes and everything? So all of those things. I just hope it really sparks that fire within you. And then on a bigger scale, my hope and dreams is I want to create a team of folks that includes the disabled community, because the beautiful thing about disabled folks is we're talented. There's a lot of wonderful comedians. There's a lot of activists out there. There's people who are actresses and actors that are out here killing it. Not just Peter Dinklage, but there's so many. And yeah, and they're not getting the exposure that they deserve. And I hope that I can be in a position to lift those people up and create a lane for them to be seen, because like I said, they deserve to be seen. And also for folks to know that we are multifaceted people. We can be funny without being the punchline. We can be sexy and not be laughed at. We could be all of these things. And so I want to create a little world of disabled folks of all disabilities, just having a voice and having full autonomy. And then also, like, you know, with my best friend Ronisha, I just hope that she can also explode in the talents that she has. And I hope that she could stay with me forever in my like world. But I mean, I also want this podcast to also push her closer to what it is that she desires as well. So there's a lot of things, like there's a lot of hopes with this podcast that I hope to throw out there. And then last thing, I'm sorry. And then for me too, I also just want to also kind of find my place as well. I don't believe that the podcast is the only thing for me. I have a lot of other desires that I was always afraid to reach for because of the fact that I didn't see a lot of representation out there in my childhood. And so I've never seen a girl that looked just like me in, you know, SNL, right? I've never seen anyone that lived a life like mine on a big screen. So I wish to, you know, create those things, you know, creating media where I can see people that look like me and other types of disabilities, and we are seen as human, because we are oftentimes are seen, even in the media, as these, you know, either we're a punchline or we're almost we hate our lives, we're a punchline, or we're here to make like the main character a good person, like a good human being. Like we're just like a crutch, right? I know like in film, we always talk about like the white savior in film. But there is something similar with the disabled trope. Like The able-bodied person meets a disabled person, and it's like, how can I be a good person through you, right?
Absolutely.
And it's like, we're not here for that. I'm sorry. So
you're right. Yeah, you're completely right on that. Actually, it's funny that you mentioned that because just a quick thing. I'm not trying to go on a tangent, but I have Disney Plus. Everyone who knows me knows I'm a huge Disney fan, right? So about a couple of weeks ago, I watched The Hunchback of Notre Dame. And I remember even now, as an adult, getting so, quite frankly, pissed off because I could not understand. I felt like Quasimodo deserved Esmeralda. And it was so sad and so heartbreaking to see him, basically be there to bring Esmeralda, and I forgot the other guy, but with the whole savior, Prince Charming look, whatever his name is in the movie, he grabs literally his hand in her hands and pulls it together. And I'm like, but Quasimodo's the one who saved her. Like, he deserves love, right? But then I wonder if it's almost this thing where maybe, Disney or just other books and stories and movies feel like in the real world, right? That possibly can't happen, right? You can't have this, gorgeous, beautiful princess Mary, right? Someone who has or is living with a disability. And I just think that's absolutely untrue. And just the message behind that, what it teaches kids. Because I can't imagine, like you're saying, you're watching, you and I could both be watching The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and how you feel about the movie would be completely different than how I feel. There's probably some kids out there who, or parents, anyone who don't even feel anything, right? When they see it. It's not, I can't imagine if there is actually a child out there who looks like Quasimodo, right? Or, can relate to him and wonder, growing up thinking, is that going to be my life? Is nobody, interested in me? Is always Prince Charming going to get the girl? Just as an example. But you bring up a really, really great point. And I think it's definitely something that people need to see. Representation is so key. And so I love how that's what you want to do. And I encourage you, and you already know I encourage Ronisha for sure, but I encourage both of you guys to keep going, because I think this podcast is just great, and it's going to open things up, and you guys are going to be on to bigger and better things for sure. So,
thank you.
I'm just so excited about everything you guys have. And my final question to you is, I know we've been talking about so many ways that the community can better support people who are, living with disabilities, but also in terms of people, the oppression that people and disabled folks experience. How can the community, how can me, everyday people, other people, how can we better support? If you could just give us like one or two specific examples.
Yes. I would strongly encourage people to listen to people's stories. YouTube is my best friend. Okay. And if you go on YouTube or something as simple as Twitter, or Instagram, look at someone who is a part of the disability community. Read their posts, read their tweets, listen to their voice, and listen to what they're telling you. Listen to their experiences, and just immerse yourself completely into their world. It's kind of like the same for any type of other community. If you are not from this specific community, but you want to understand, the best thing is to just immerse yourself and to listen.
Right. Absolutely.
Sometimes it's like, don't say nothing, just listen to them, and so of course, just, gauge it, of course, but yeah, listen to what they have to say. Let them have a lane, okay, for themselves. Right. And then my
Right.
other point too, or my last point, is to just, just like think about your language. Something as simple as that can really be impactful. Um,
Right.
think about what you're saying whenever you see someone, for example, who is vision impaired.
Right.
Think about what joke you are about to say, because everybody's a jokester nowadays. Um,
Right.
but think about it before you say it. Is this
Mm,
okay? Is this what is this doing? If this person hears this joke, what am I doing to them? Like, am
mm,
I completely invalidating their lives right now?
mm.
So like think about what you're about to say and then decide whether or not I probably shouldn't say that, or maybe I should say something else, right? So just think about your language throughout your
Absolutely.
life. So,
Absolutely. No, those are really good tips. Really, really good tips and important advice. Well, Toria, it has been such a pleasure to have you on the show today. You have definitely educated me. I know viewers are sitting here thinking the same way, and I look forward to having you, of course, on the show again. I just want to make sure that viewers know where they can go and listen to the podcast, and please share with us also as well any social media. For anyone who has questions, I'm sure Toria would not mind you asking her, and you can learn more. So where can we go to learn more and listen and all of that good stuff?
we finally figured out Spotify, so we're on Spotify now. You would have to type "Just a Little Pod" by Toria and Ronisha. You can also find us on SoundCloud, Just a Little Pod.
Perfect.
Our Twitter and Instagram is at Just a Little Pod. And we have a website, justalittlepod.com. I also do a little bit of writing on that website too. So if you're interested in that, you'll find that and you'll find our episodes. And this Friday will be episode number 2. So please follow us on all of those platforms so you can stay up to date. And
Great. Super excited. Well, thank you again, Toria. Like I said, we'll definitely have you on the show again. And we look forward to keeping up with all of your projects and things that you and Miss Ronisha have going on. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye. And I will talk to you soon. Yeah, of course.